Well, it's a pleasure to be back with you again. I'm Jason Brilliant, your host for the Brilliant Fishing NC podcast, and I'm here today again with Tony Sharum, Shadnator. He's one of our former podcast guests. In fact, Tony, when you were here last time, it was one of the first podcasts that I did. And it's one of the most watched podcasts that we have.
There you go.
All right. So we're going to see today if the beard helps, though.
Well, after seeing your beard, I just had to do something. I think I'm really probably just trying to hide some ugliness, but anyway,
that's my goal. That's what I'm doing.
There you go.
Yeah, I got to cover up something. I got this big forehead. I can't have that much face,
Yeah, I've got a little big head too. There we go.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you back again today. And, I was just telling you before we started recording that, one of the things I'm really excited about doing, we're recording this March 17th. We're just about to have that spring migration of, striped bass going up the river. And, I've heard that a good way to target them is to fish below the dams. So not only do you have like the spring, stripers kind of coming up in that fast water behind the dams, but from what I understand from you, that's a good water to fish, other times of the year as well, like for catfish and other species. So it's a type of fishing that I kind of want to know more about. And I feel like a lot of us, out here in the fishing world, we have questions about it. It seems maybe a little intimidating, maybe a little dangerous. So we just kind of wanted to pick your brain today as far as live bait fishing, below the dams. And
Yeah, okay. Well, in my opinion, some of the best fishing in our areas are in the tail races of the dams on the Yadkin River chain. Mm-hmm. You got High Rock Dam, Tuckertown Dam, Narrows Dam, which holds Baden Lake, and then Falls Dam, which runs into Tillery, and then you have the dam at holds Tillery, goes into Blewett Falls Lake. Now, that's the one dam I haven't fished behind all the years I've been here.
Okay.
I know it's really, really rocky.
Okay.
And it's really, really tough, and they do catch a lot of fish down there, but I don't go down there.
Okay.
So if you want to call it expertise, my experience has been High Rock, Tuckertown, Narrows, and Tillery. Mm-hmm. And April is the month. Man, it's like you turn a light switch on. April, May is super. Right now, March, it's starting, but it's not there yet.
Sure.
And probably one of the number one things around the dams, fishing as far as success or not success, I would, in my opinion, 90% of the time, it has to be flow being released from the powerhouse generally. Now, I've caught them with the floodgates open also, but that's more dangerous, and you have to really pick your spots where you're going to be. Certain dams, you don't want to be even close to them at all. Others, you can fish if you're experienced and know what you're doing. But just general discharge we'll talk about is the discharge from the powerhouses. And so if I pull up in April and there's no discharge, I'm probably going to go somewhere else because it's just not going to be very good most of the time.
Okay. And
there's not a schedule that we can get that tells us beforehand as far as tomorrow at 9 o'clock they're going to turn it on. We can go on their Cube Carolina's website.
Okay.
It's called Cube Carolina, and you can go to lake levels and look at they have two dams that are displayed as far as the discharge. That's High Rock Dam, and that's the Narrows Dam, which the Narrows holds Baden Lake.
Okay.
And so a good rule of thumb, generally, this is very general, but at High Rock Dam, if they're releasing water from High Rock Lake into Tuckertown Lake, you can be pretty assured that the same amount of water is being released into Baden Lake at the Tuckertown Dam. Okay. It's like filling a cup.
Sure.
And Tuckertown, they keep at a pretty constant level within roughly between about 2 foot of full most of the time. So when they're putting 8,000 cubic feet per second into Tuckertown Lake, they got to be letting that out keep the lake from overfilling.
Okay, so if the one dam is releasing, chances are good the other one's going to be
Well,
releasing.
the other one right there. Now, sometimes because they are able to hold back water more in certain situations, the Narrows Dam may not be running at the same amount, and the Tillery Dam may not be running at the same amount based as High Rock is. So that it can vary there. But those two dams, a lot of times, will run very similar.
Okay.
And when they're running, that's like ringing the dinner bell for fish. That's the time to be there. That is the time to be there.
And I'll link that website below, and I think a lot of you probably know where it is, but it's I'll put the link in the description.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed on that link, or on that page, the cube page, it'll say the body water, how many feet below full, and then it'll have like a a fluctuation forecast. So have like an arrow up
arrow
or
down,
whatever.
up or steady.
How accurate is that in your opinion, or does that help you?
It does. It helps. Now, one of the things I always look at is the time and date. Sometimes their computer system or their the sensors are froze.
Oh.
And you'll be looking at it, and it's like, oh man, they're releasing X amount of such and such, and this is great.
Sure.
But then if you really look at the date and the time, it was yesterday. Now, it don't happen all the time, but it does happen. So I always look at the date and time of it updates every 6 minutes at the dams, the two dams that they're showing. So as long as it's updated, your time is good, then it should be showing what's happening at that time.
Okay, so I think we've kind of covered obviously the location below the dam.
Right.
We've talked a little bit about when, because you want to look for the the gates to be open, or the general discharge.
The discharge from the powerhouses.
Yeah, and so just to be clear on that, the two dams that we're mostly talking about, if you're pulling up in the boat behind the dam, it's all the way on the right,
That's
which
correct.
is where you see the powerhouse, and the discharge is coming from underneath.
Yes.
Okay, as opposed to like on the left-hand side, you've got the spillway where the water comes over the top. That would be the floodgate side.
That's right.
So so what you're looking for then is on the right-hand side for it to be
the discharge. Yes.
Yeah.
From the powerhouses.
Okay, good deal.
So going back to what you said, April. One of the things about April. So striped bass in these inland lakes are all stocked fish. North Carolina Wildlife stocks a certain amount each year. If the numbers are still the same, which I think they are, it's approximately 79,000 go into High Rock Lake, 13,000 go into Tuckertown Lake, 180,000 go into Baden Lake. Those are the three I'm familiar with, and that's every year. Unfortunately, they're really, really small. Because I've been there and watched them, and a tear go down my face because they go out in just seconds, and 50,000 are put in there, and they're about this long. So everything out there is eating those things.
Right.
And I asked the biologist one time, I said, because the very first time I ever seen it, and I knew they were coming, I said, man, I got to go see this. This is my thing.
Yeah.
So I went there, and I was just amazed to see, first of all, it was very simple. And it was it was almost a letdown because the tanker pulls up to the boat ramp. This guy puts this big hose pipe on the back, and he puts it down into the water, and he pulls this lever, and it's like flushing a big toilet. And it goes whoosh, and 50,000 go in.
Right.
And they're all little bitty. And I'm looking at them, I said, well, I was thinking I was going to see something back in the old days, Marlon Perkins, there on Mutual of Omaha, gently dipping out these stripers about this long.
Right, about as long as you can.
Yeah. No.
Oh, no.
So what they told me was the longer they're in the hatchery, in the vats and so forth, they'll start cannibalizing each other the bigger they get. They lose so many because of that. It's better to put them in small, and maybe the percentage, scientifically, the percentage is better. But we all know everything in the lake that can eat a little fry fish is pretty much going to eat one if it can. But enough live that we catch them.
Yeah, we do catch some,
So April is the month for the stripers in these landlocked or these lake stripers around the dams. And they do come up. So they try to do a spawn just like they would if they're coming from salt water, but they can only go as far as the dam.
Right,
And they congregate, which is a good thing.
For us, that's a good thing because we
For
know
us,
where
it's a
they
good
are.
thing. That's exactly right.
I mean, they may not be every fish there, but there's going to be a high concentration.
They're going to, yes,
Yep.
exactly.
And that's what we as fishermen, we thrive on.
That's exactly right.
Figure out where they're congregated and go wet a hook.
Yep.
Well, let's talk a little bit about bait now. I know your handle, the Shadnator, so he's knows a thing or two about shad. I mean, the two types of shad we have in our area, because we're fairly far south, we have threadfins, and then we also have gizzard shad. I mean, can you kind of walk us through kind of the distinction between those? I mean, not necessarily what they look like, but as far as their suitability for fishing bait in different situations. And
so, in my opinion, for what it's worth, in my experience fishing with both, I visualize gizzard shad like a big old juicy double cheeseburger with bacon. Man, that thing is good. And a threadfin shad is a soy burger.
Oh, okay,
So,
I got you.
Now, some people will argue with me, but that's okay. I have caught stripers and every kind of fish you could think of on both species. However, most of the time, gizzard shad seem to be the better bait. They're definitely more hardy than the threadfin. They're bigger than the threadfin. Threadfin are way more delicate. They just can't take a lot of abuse. Neither can take much abuse, but threadfin are more temperature sensitive. It seems like they just die so much easier.
Right.
And there is times I will specifically go and get threadfin, but that's just that's rare.
So if you're after
gizzard.
So if you're fishing for catfish and stripers specifically, I mean, big bait.
I generally want gizzard shad, and I like them. For stripers in our area and largemouth, between 4 to 6 inches.
Okay.
So one about that long is perfect.
Okay, good.
I just love him. I mean,
Okay.
that's a gizzard about that size.
Okay. All right.
Both stripers and largemouth love them.
Okay.
Love them.
So in what circumstances would you maybe prefer a threadfin? If you're going after like white bass or something
white
smaller?
Bass, I use them a little bit occasionally. I'll downsize my hooks. To a really small hook. When I say small, I'm talking like either a 1 or a 1/0. I like owner bait saver hooks. Now they're not circle hooks; these are just J hooks, but they're short and stubby.
Sure,
they're small, and you can hook a shad in the nose and it don't kill them.
Okay.
And that's where I hook most of my shad when I'm live bait fishing, right through the hard part of their nose.
So do you have trouble if you hook them through the nose with them riding up the hook and getting like rehooked on the hook?
I've never had that happen.
Okay. So are you hooking them like through the nostrils, or you're going up?
Usually, if this is their nose right here, I go most of the time sideways through it. Okay. And I never use more than a 2/0. I use a 2/0 owner bait saver hook. Okay. And a lot of times a 1/0. They're sort of smaller hooks, but it doesn't injure the shad as much. They're very, very sharp. Okay. So they're easy to hook, and man, I've caught some monster fish with those small hooks. Yeah.
No, if you're doing so like your small thread fins for white bass, you're using the real like a 1. Yeah. Do you get bigger if you got a bigger bait? Or are you going for like, let's just say you're summertime fishing for bigger catfish or whatever? Do you get bigger?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of times with the catfish, I'm going to use, first of all, I'm using a way bigger hook. Okay. I generally use an 8/0 hook a lot of times. It's a good in-between hook. Okay. Generally for catfish, it works good for me. Circle hooks. And they don't do well with threadfin because the hooks are so big.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to use one.
They're going to be dead anyway most of their time. Okay. But for the if I'm trying to use them live, I'm going to pick bigger gizzard shad, bigger, really big sometimes. Okay. And I will hook them different according to where current versus still water also. Okay. So if you're in still water, some people want to hook them in the back, which is fine. But if you try to do that in swift water, it's not going to work. You're going to sit there and twirl and end up killing them. Okay. And then one other thing too with threadfin, if you're trying to use threadfin in a current, they just can't keep up with the current. A lot of times they can't swim fast enough, especially if you're anchored or spot locked or whatever you're casting them, and maybe you're going to use them on a planer board. I use a lot of planer boards when I'm striper fishing.
Yeah.
And I anchor in the current or on the current edges and use the current to pull my boards out. And I'll run my, without a weight on it, I run my line behind the planers 25, 30 feet.
Okay.
So the shad is really only a foot or so below the surface oftentimes. And you'll see the strike when they hit, because you'll see this big splash, or the shad will come jumping out of the water trying to get away. I had one time even chased it up on the bank. The shad jumped on the bank and was flopping on the bank. So I was real close to the bank at this particular spot. And he about 4 jumps, and he finally fell back in the water. And then the striper smacked him.
What?
And I caught him. Yeah, about a 10, 12 pounder. So
really?
That was really cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Man, that would be fun to see right there. Okay, well, since we're talking about like the presentation, so a lot of times you're using like a mono leader.
I do.
You got your hook, you got your planer board, and we talked about how you hooked them. So for let's just say you're doing the spring striper, so that's when you said you're probably using the 1/0 with a 4 to 6 inch gizzard shad.
Yeah, 1 to 2 all.
Okay.
So your basic rig stripers are line sensitive. Some people use fluorocarbon for their leaders.
Okay.
Now a lot of times High Rock Tuckertown is sort of stained, and I think you can get by with a heavier line sometimes.
Okay.
Because of that.
Okay.
And because of the catfish have exploded in the past few years, and I used to use like 12-pound to 14-pound tests on average for my leader.
Okay.
That the hook was tied to.
Sure.
But I catch so many catfish, and it's not unusual to go catch a 20 to 30-pound blue cat when I'm trying to catch stripers. I mean, it happens all, and I catch them on them little 1 and 2 all hooks sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So I found that I needed a little heavier leader sometimes.
Heavier leader.
I use between 14 and 17-pound tests most of the times. What I use, just because I get so many big fish that hit that. In that current too, I'm anchored. I've got, I might have 8 rods out, and trying to chase one down with all that stuff out, it's really difficult.
Yeah, that would be hard.
So I tend to go a little heavier. But if you want to catch more, use lighter line. Okay. But then you're gonna break off too.
Right. Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your planers. I know I didn't have this down, but do you have a type of planer board you like, or do you just a little bit of everything?
I'm all about saving money. Okay. And I made my own. Okay. Not taken away from any commercially made.
Sure.
There's some really great boards out here. Some guys are making themselves and selling.
Yeah,
they're super. I've seen them.
Yeah.
And they're almost too pretty to put on the line.
I know. Yeah.
Mine are not. Okay. But I looked at them, and I'm not a very crafty person, but I'm like, you know what? I can do that.
You could make something that's functional.
And I made it functional. So if you fish a lot, you've seen these big blocks of foam floating around on the Yak and on the High Rock, all the different lakes. It used to be used for floating piers, and they got away from it. Okay. But I found it floating, and I brought it home. And if you cut into it, the inside of it looks brand new. Okay. It's a little hard, but that's what I've used to make my float out.
It's like a closed cell foam type stuff.
So it floats well. I've used
interesting.
I've used archery, target. Squares that are sort of squishy foam. They float well. So my average board is 10 inches long, 4 inches wide. 2 inches of that is the foam. Right. Really works really good. Yeah. I've used aluminum plate or plexiglass. Okay. And so I've got about probably total $3 in making. Yeah, they're not expensive. The most expensive thing I've got is I like a clip. It's a red clip. Gosh, I wish I could think of the name of it right now.
I think I know.
But they're a tension clip.
Yeah.
And so I will screw on it. You can tighten it, and that's what holds the line. But anyway, so I made my own. I've got probably 8 or 10 of them. Awesome. Even to put my phone number and name, and I lost one Friday. And so a long time ago, I put my phone number on these things and my name. And I was thinking, back then when I was working, for those that do know, I was a wildlife officer for 30 years. So I figured if I checked somebody and they had my board, they're going to better have a good excuse why they had my board and they didn't call me. So anyway, I got a call from a guy Saturday, and he found my board. Cool. Because it broke loose, and we had everything out. I couldn't go after it, but he was nice enough to call me.
Okay.
I went down to Tuckertown and met him, and I got my board back. So that was
Okay.
great. So I make my own boards, and they're really easy to do.
Yeah.
They're super easy.
I've made some before using like a pool noodle for the foam.
The only thing with the pool noodles I found is they deteriorate so quickly.
They do.
And that's the downside.
Sure.
So if you're going to paint them, you need to use a latex tile paint. If you use acrylic, it'll eat any kind of foam.
It'll eat the
but the
foam,
latex won't.
Oh, okay.
And I use like a fluorescent orange or something like that. That's what I've painted mine, and they show up really good.
Okay. Well, let's talk about bait. And I know one of the big things, and I've asked you a ton of questions about catching and keeping bait, but let's just kind of talk about that. Best way to locate and catch bait around here.
Live scope. All right, so
All right, live scope it.
Your live scope is like one of the best, easiest way to find your bait. But standard sonar,
Okay.
Now, at times of the year, here by the end of April, you can go almost any cove, shallow area up in the coves on the lakes, and just randomly throw. When I say shallow, I'm talking 4 to 6 feet.
Okay.
And you'll catch shad. I mean, on the Yakima
They'll be
chain,
there somewhere.
on High Rock, it's a little different on Baden, but
Right.
on High Rock lakes specifically, you just you can catch them. But now, right now, it's really hard to catch them in places. Now,
They're a little deeper.
yes,
Yeah.
they're deeper. Currently, they've been in Abbott's Creek by the millions. It's just crazy to see the amount of shad over there.
Yeah.
So they're very easy to catch over there with a big enough net. You got to be able to throw a net that's not too big but big.
Okay.
I keep 4 nets on my boat.
Wow.
And I have an 8 foot that's 5/8 mesh, and I have an 8 foot that's 3/8 mesh.
Okay.
So the 5/8, if the shad is about that long or smaller, he'll swim out of it. So if I'm wanting to keep smaller shad, I throw the 3/8 mesh. But if I want to just keep bigger shad, then I'll throw the 5/8, which allows little ones to get out.
Okay.
And then
That's
the
a
other
good
ones,
plan.
both of those nets are taped, which the tape acts like a parachute basically, or it causes even a really bad throw. You can throw a terrible throw on the water, and as that thing sinks, it'll puff out like a parachute with the tape around it.
Okay.
You can buy them commercially made. Again, I like to save money, so I found that if you go get packing tape that has the strings in it, that you can get at Staples.
Oh, yeah.
And what you do, you take your net, lay it out, just sit in a chair, and I cut it in strips about that long.
Okay.
And I'll put about this far from the weights.
Okay.
So on my leg, I'll lay the net there, and I'll put the bottom layer on, make sure it's where I want it, and then I cut the next section a couple inches longer, and I push it together, and I pat it down, and so I have it overhanging a little bit. So when I put the next one, that's where it connects, and I just do that all the way around the net.
Oh.
And I've never had the tape come off yet.
Really?
Matter of fact, when you push it together, you're not going to get it apart without tearing your net.
You better have it straight.
Yes,
when
you
put
better have it the way you want it. But it don't take that long, and it's way cheaper than buying a tape net.
Excellent. Well, that's cool about the tape net. I want to do that. I've got a net that I've actually got for that purpose. I want to tape. So
let me give you the disadvantage of a tape net.
Okay.
If one of the disadvantages is it definitely slows down the sinking of the net, and in clear water, the bait will swim away from it.
Okay.
So Baden, especially when I'm throwing in deep water on Baden Lake, I've watched them. You can see them. I'm looking through the live scope, and the fish are here. And as the net starts getting to them, they start. They dodge it. And herring will definitely dodge it. Now, in the daytime, they will dodge it every time. It's crazy. So that's when you want to use maybe a mesh that's a little bigger if you want to sink faster, heavier weights, but not have tape on it because if you're having that problem.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about now. So now we got the bait. We found it. We've used the live scope. We've thrown on the bait. We've caught us a wad of bait.
How are we going to keep it alive?
Yeah, keeping it alive. And then I know you also tell us a little bit about what you do, because I know there's a step that you do before you put them in your tank. Like you're putting them, yeah.
So one of the things, now I'm like everybody else. If you've been fishing a long time, trying to save money, the commercial made shad tanks are pricey.
Yeah.
They are expensive.
They
hands
are.
down, but they're good. And I made a bunch of tanks myself, being not crafty, but I seen lots of people do it over the years, got ideas from other people, and I made them. But you will reach your technological limit just by your homemade tank.
Sure.
Several things that cause this problem is heat, scales and debris, dirty ammonia from the fish, slime. So you need a filter. You need cool water, not too cold, and a filter system. Filter system, aeration are two big things. Now this time of year, March, the temperature is not a big issue. February, March, you can keep them alive till they almost starve to death because the water's cool as long as you keep it oxygenated. They do well. Threadfin are way harder than gizzard shad. Gizzard shad will do a lot better. And then also, there's several things you do. So what you were alluding to, I have a floating basket. It's actually a crabber's basket. I bought it from Bass Pro. And the difference between it versus a laundry basket, it's a lot heavier duty plastic. Because it's made to put crabs and shellfish in.
Yeah.
And it's more sturdy. And then I took pool noodles and zip tied them on it to make it float beside the boat. So I got a little small rope I tie it to the side of my boat. And when I bring the net full of bait in, whether it's got full of crappie and all this other stuff, and my shad, I shake it off into this net, this floating deal, that the basket, and they get in there. So they're just swimming around, and all these scales. So when you first catch shad, scales come off of them like crazy, and they'll urinate and do whatever shad do. I don't know, but a lot of ammonia is released. So I let them set in that basket. Sometimes 2 or 3 throws before I ever move them to the tank, and that really cuts down on a lot of the shad or shad scales.
Yeah, fish poop and all that other stuff.
So that does seem to help a little bit.
Okay. Well, that puts less stress on your filtration system once you do move them over to your tank.
So in the tank, I use well water or the river water. Either one. But I always treat it. I put use rock salt. Now I buy the pool salt. You can buy a 25-pound bag, pretty cheap. And for a 50-gallon tank, now there's a scientific. You can look it up on YouTube, and guys will tell you exactly how much to use. But for me, I usually use about 2.5 handfuls, about like that. And that seems to work good. I got big hands, but it's I know it's just sort of like when you're cooking.
So that's probably a measuring cup
probably
2 cups.
Probably 2.5 cups.
2.5 cups
roughly for a 50-gallon
tank.
Also, I buy some stuff. It's an aquarium ammonia absorber called Zeolite. I buy it in bulk off of Amazon, and I put it in. What I put it in is a sock.
Really?
I put it in a sock, and I just leave it in the bottom of of my tank. So it's up to the very bottom, so the shad aren't running into it. And it helps absorb ammonia. And then after a while, I'll wash it out. And if it seems okay, I'll put it back in. But after a while, I'll throw it away and put some more in. It looks like gravel, like gray gravel is what it looks like.
Interesting. It absorbs ammonia.
Yes, exactly. So that, along with aeration, I have a creek bank tank, a really good tank. They're well made. And they, through I think a Ventura, I think it's the name of it, a little air device, sucks air, causes bubbles to go in there, and that's important. When you in your tank, try to not to have anything down in your tank that the shad can run into. Most successful tanks are oval or round, so the shad will get in there to swim around and around.
They can't get in a corner.
If you got a corner, they're going to go right to the corner and sit there and swim until they die. And believe it or not, a red-nosed shad, I don't know what it is. Stripers just don't like them. They will hit them occasionally, but they don't like them. It's amazing, really. So once they get really injured and red-faced, red-nosed, and all that, they're not as effective.
Interesting. Well, that's good to know. Very good to know.
Talked a little bit about stripers. Largemouth start doing after April. They get active behind the dam, usually in May, because they come off the beds and they're there.
Okay.
So you can catch a lot of largemouth.
So I didn't even think about the largemouth aspect. So you said that's April after?
Well, they're on the beds in April.
Okay.
So usually April, the first part of April, I don't catch many largemouth at all. But then about the first week of May, I start picking them up there, and that's after they come off the beds and they're up there hungry and eating. And I regularly catch them between 4 and 6 pounds.
I saw y'all caught a pig of a largemouth the other day. Where was that?
That was right below the Bringle Ferry Bridge.
Okay.
At that shoal down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I catch a lot of largemouth.
Yeah. Well, that day I was with you, we caught a lot when the little side discharge. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about safety challenges.
Oh yeah.
So.
Okay, safety, man. That's really the number one thing you always ought to think about around any of these dams. Okay?
Sure.
Of course, I've been here a long time, and when I was a wildlife officer, I had to deal with a lot of really terrible incidents that occurred around some of the dams, and the vast majority, most everyone I could think of, some unwise decisions were often made by the person in the boat that was driving. And number one, if I can give you one piece of advice, it's always wear your life jacket.
Okay.
Always. Now, there is a regulation that says if you're within 100 feet of these dams on the Yadkin River chain, you're supposed to wear a life jacket.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what the rule says.
You said 100 yards?
100 feet.
100 feet, okay.
And I don't care if it's the regulation or not. For my own, I'm going to wear it for myself.
Sure.
So the people, I've personally watched 2 different boats sink, getting into the wrong areas up there around High Rock Dam.
Okay.
Never anchor your boat from the stern, which is the rear of your boat, especially if you're in a flow. Okay. So if we're fishing behind High Rock Dam and they're releasing water, whether it's the powerhouse or the gates, even if you put an anchor at the front of your boat, do not put an anchor at the back of your boat, because if that front anchor comes loose or breaks loose or something happens, your boat's going to swing around to the rear, and the rear of your boat's going to face that current, and within seconds it'll overflow over the stern because it pulls the stern down, and it will sink you. I watched them sink up there.
Wow.
And so never ever anchor from the stern. Wear your life jacket, and if you hear sirens or unusual alarms going off, move away from the dam. You know, every week they do a test of their alert sirens, and even though I know they do that test, if they turn that on, I move, because most of the time they're just testing the siren, and I'm not even going to tell you what day it is, because I know what day it is. But I don't want you thinking, oh, they're just testing it. If you hear those sirens, move away from the dam, period. And then once it's over and nothing happens, the gate doesn't open or so forth after a little bit, then you can move back. But some of these are automated, and the alarm will go off, and then they'll open a gate. So you've got to be vigilant. And the rules say you're not supposed to anchor within 100 feet of the dam or tie to the dam. Okay? That's what the rule says. And now you can use your anchor lock and all that, but as far as dropping the anchor, you're not supposed to anchor within 100 foot. Now there's where the 100-foot mark.
That'd be pretty close.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close. So it's just it's not designated on the shoreline or anything. And so just use good common sense. It's for your own good, because there's been multiple people over the years that have drowned around these dams. Most of them were downstream from the dams. Only a couple that I can think of was right at the dam itself, and because of poor choices of where they positioned their boat, resulted in something bad happening.
Sure.
So wear your life jacket, and the other thing is rocks. Man,
oh my goodness, the rocks.
These places are shallow. People ask me weekly, especially when I post a lot of pictures, and I'm very frank, and I tell people where I'm catching fish. However, I've said before, I've met most of these rocks personally, and I've broke a bunch of stuff. And when the water is flowing, you can actually see the swirls, and it's easier. But when there's not much flow or no flow at all, that's when it's the hardest because you can't see where the rocks are. And if you try to mark a route with your GPS, you got to remember that GPS is not super accurate. And sometimes I'm passing a rock this close. It's right there. Yeah. And because of how they're releasing the flow, some days I have to pull this way, some days I have to go this way because the current pushes or pulls me according to wherever I'm at.
Yeah.
So, and that comes from experience of, I can look at the water and know, okay, I need to go this direction a little more. And it can get you in a world of trouble quick by not knowing that.
So, well, that's good information. I know the rocks, the rocks got me last year because I got up there and stayed for a while. But as I was there, the water level went down, and before I knew it, I was high centered on a rock that hadn't been causing me problems, but now it's causing problems.
It can drop like 2 feet in just a matter of a couple minutes. If they turn the water off at the dam, that area up there just goes.
That's what it did.
And you will. You can be centered right on a rock. And so again. And people say, well, tell me how to get up there. It's hard to tell you how to get up there because you really visually are looking, okay, I got to go here, then I got to turn here. And so it's a tough place to learn.
It would be tough.
But once you learn it, and it is one of the best, hands down places to fish in the spring. I love them. I fish all these dams all the way. Well, I fish them all the time, but through June. And everything, catfish, white bass. White bass will be up there, being caught from now through April. Stripers, April into May. Largemouth bass usually starts about the first week of May because they'll go on beds early April. Then they go up there and start eating. I catch a lot of largemouth bass at all the dams, especially at Tuckertown Dam on Baden. I catch a lot of largemouth down there.
Really? Okay.
On live shad. I mean, they get up there in that big, shallow, flat area below the shoals.
Okay.
And it's just a great place.
Wow. That's cool. I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, it is a little sketchy in there, but I think if you follow some basic safety rules and then, pay attention to what you're doing, I think you can have a good time for sure.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. What's the biggest fish that you have caught or you've seen caught below these dams? I'm sure it was the size of a Volkswagen. Because everybody says
about the catfishes, there's all.
And the divers saw them.
The divers saw them,
yeah.
The two stories you hear are the giant catfish below the dams, and it's never a regular diver. It always has to be a Navy SEAL diver.
Yeah, exactly.
They go down because
that's
a plane
important.
Crashed, a boat sunk, somebody drowned,
exactly.
Or they're inspecting the dam and they go down.
That's always
biggest catfish they ever seen in their life, bigger than a person. And never going back again. So if you don't have a dam big enough to support that story, then you have to revert to the story of the swimming hole with the pretty girl that jumps in and gets 1,000 water moccasin bites and kills it. So those are the two stories I heard no matter where I went across this state. But so catfish, there are big catfish down there. So the biggest fish I ever seen, I netted for a fella. I seen him. I was fishing, and it was somebody that I had. Just a person I knew from working, and I seen him on the shoreline at the dam at High Rock Dam he used a big surf rod, hooked a big striper. Back in the day, there were big stripers there. And when I say big, I'm talking 25-pound plus.
Wow.
So anyway, I could tell it was spooling him, and I hollered at him, said, "Hey, you want me to come pick you up?" And so I pulled my boat right over to the end of that wall, and he jumped on the bow of my boat. And we chased the fish down the river. So when we caught it, which was almost at the Bringle Ferry Bridge, it was 31 pounds.
Really?
So I've had from some good, reasonable sources up to 35 pounds. But that, and I laid eyes on it, and I netted it, and I weighed it, and it was 31 pounds.
31 pounds.
That was one of the biggest I've seen personally.
Sakes.
My best I ever caught was 25 pounds, and it was below the Highway 64 bridge on the Yadkin River in April. When we did have big stripers, they still run all the way up to Idles Dam in Forsyth County, all the way up the Yadkin.
Wow.
And I used to go up to a place, and it was a hard place to get to with a prop boat. Jet boats still go there all the time, but I would catch stripers there. So we caught, at High Rock Dam, we caught several in the 25 to 28 pounds back in those days.
Yeah.
But
so it's probably what, like late 90s, early 2000s?
It was in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
So they still, every year, they still catch some between 15 to 22 pounds.
Okay.
There could be some bigger ones caught, but a lot of the big ones have been caught now.
Yeah. I mean, now a 15-pounder.
A 15-pounder catch your attention.
Yeah.
I think the last time I caught one over 20 was 6 years ago.
Okay.
My daughter caught a 25-pounder.
Really?
And that might have been 7 years ago she caught it. But anyway, still see, we catch a lot, 5 to 10 pounds. 12 is not unusual.
Sure.
I caught some last year, 12, 13 pounds.
Goodness. That's still sizable fish around here.
Catfish, I've seen plenty of 40 to mid 40s on flatheads. Blues have just in the last few years started to become more prevalent up there. I personally hadn't seen anything over 45 pounds on the blues up there. Not saying somebody hadn't caught a 60, but just at the dams themselves, I haven't personally seen that yet. We've at the Tillery at the Falls Dam, I've caught them 45 to 48 pounds right there near the dam. So there are some good blues and the flatheads. The flatheads will get up there in mid-April.
Okay.
Usually mid-April to the second week of May, and usually do pretty good on flatheads and the blue cats too.
Yeah. You ever? This is kind of a random question. But you ever come across any like super unusual or rare fish, like something just totally out of the blue?
I've seen a 21-inch brown trout, probably 10 rainbow trout.
Really?
The rainbows I feel like came from people using them for striper bait.
Okay, yeah.
The brown was, like I said, 21 inches, and it was a big old brown. The guy caught it on a worm there at Tamarack one time.
Really?
They called one of this, identified this fish. It had teeth and didn't know what it was. I seen pacu caught.
Oh wait, a what now?
Pacu is in the piranha family.
What?
Pacu have.
I've heard of them, but I didn't know.
They're not like piranha teeth.
They
look like people teeth.
Yeah, they look like a pompano, but they got like teeth like a sheep's head.
Yeah.
They're really.
And it was the one I seen was probably that big.
How in the world did that get up here?
People, it's aquarium fish that they dumped out.
Oh, okay.
So I've seen those.
Oh my goodness.
I've heard of a walleye years ago.
Okay.
Right when I first come here.
Right.
But I've never seen it.
Sure.
But that's probably
some of the weirder catches.
Some of the weirdest ones.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I've heard of the rainbow trout, and I'm like you. I think they're striper bait.
Yeah,
but,
I think so. But that one brown was pretty big, and I've seen smallmouth.
Yeah.
Actually, I've caught smallmouth in the Yadkin part of High Rock in the wintertime.
Really?
And there's a lot of spotted bass up there also.
Okay.
And I've caught spotted bass every year.
Okay.
Sometimes a lot of them in the Yadkin River portion.
Right.
I've never caught them in the lake. It's always been in the river. And then it's not unusual to catch smallmouth on Tillery because of the Uwharrie River.
The Uwharrie's got them. Yeah.
They've got them. I caught one last year. It was pretty decent.
Yeah. They're saying, like, if you really want to have a cool trip, do a float trip down the Uwharrie.
And I've done it.
Yeah, have you?
Oh, yeah.
I've had some buddies that have done it, and they say it's really cool. You can catch a lot of neat stuff, smallmouths and stuff.
That's right.
Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I didn't know if you have any closing thoughts or any, like, pieces of advice for people looking to fish below the dam.
Well,
anything we hadn't covered? Or?
We've covered it pretty well. I would just say safety, number one. Wear your life jacket if you're going to be in a boat. There are rocks, and you will hit them. If you go there, you're going to hit a rock. Just take your time and pick your routes, and you can do it. But great places to fish. Just use due caution and common sense.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate it. If you guys are watching this and you don't already, follow Tony's page, the Shadnator. Look him up on Facebook. He's a regular poster on Facebook. If you fish anywhere on the Yadkin chain, you definitely want to follow his page. He puts out not quite daily, but almost daily reports with lots of great information. It could be everything from, this is what we caught below the dam. Here's where you can find bait. What the color of the water looks like. High Rock's notorious for floating debris and muddy conditions, and Tony's page, he posts all that stuff very routinely, and it's a great source of information and fishing reports and just safety tips, great information just all the way around. So we do appreciate what you do. That helps a lot of us in the community as we read your reports.
And that's what I do the page for.
Yeah.
It's not to try to how great a fisherman I am, because a lot of you guys are way better than me. However, the stuff I put on there, I'm not trying to sell you something generally. Sometimes I sell my own stuff, but I'm not trying to sell you something, and other than just trying to help other fishermen. That's the whole purpose of it. Be kind to others and try to give helpful information that's honest and truthful. Yep,
absolutely. Well, we appreciate what you do. I'm going to go ahead and sign off today. Again, I'm Jason Brilliant, your host here for Brilliant Fishing NC Podcast. Today, again, we were interviewing Tony Sharum, Shadnator, former wildlife officer. I'll link his page down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you prefer a podcast, like an audio version of this, of course, we post the video to YouTube, but we also post the audio version to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and other popular platforms. So with that, we're signing off, and we'll catch you on the next one.